Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this reconvened meeting of Audit, Risk and Insurance. Could I pass to Denise for the roll call?
Thanks, Chair. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Here, Denise.
Alderman David Ramsey. Councillor Raymond Barr. Councillor Michaela Boyd.
And Shaw Denise and Councillor Patricia Logue sends her apologies.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Sean Carr. Councillor Emmett Doyle.
Here, Denise, thanks.
Councillor Stephen Edwards. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
Sure.
Apologies for Councillor Logue. Councillor John McGowan.
Sure.
Councillor Philip McKinney. Councillor Maeve O'Neill. Councillor Martin Riley.
Here.
Councillor Lillian Zeno Barr. Thank you, members. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Denise. And item 3 is the broadcasting statement. I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at the meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council's privacy notice may be found on Council's website, www.derrystrabane.com. Next item on the agenda is item 4, declaration of members' interest. Anyone can declare now if they wish. We'll move on. We'll go open for decision. Item 5, chairperson's business, which there is none. Item 6, matters arising from an open meeting of Audit, Risk and Insurance held on Monday the 17th of January. No matters arising, members. We'll move on. Item 7, Health, Safety and Wellbeing Committee. And Una is going to take this. Thank you, Una.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update from the recent Health, Safety and Wellbeing Committee, which was held on the 13th of January 22, and to seek members' continued endorsement for the health and safety systems and processes in place throughout the organisation. The Corporate Health, Safety and Wellbeing Committee meets quarterly and is chaired by the Chief Executive, attended by the Directors, Lead Officers and Union Representatives. It forms an important part of the 45,001 system review and provides corporate health and safety with an opportunity to update senior management within Derry City and Strabane District Council on the progress of health and safety performance throughout the organisation. The main committee summary report presented and discussed at the Corporate Health, Safety and Wellbeing Committee meeting is attached in Appendix A. The covalent reports were discussed and progress reported from each directorate is attached within Appendix B to E, and where applicable, members should note that improvement projects have been added to the covalent reports. Due to the current COVID situation, covalent objectives and targets have been updated to align COVID objectives to each service area for formal update and discussion on a regular basis. Additional to the covalent reports available at the time of the meeting, the group was updated on the 22-23 reporting requirements, and work has progressed in this area since this meeting took place back in January. The COVID situation forms a significant proportion of the discussion during the recent Health, Safety and Wellbeing Committee meeting, and attendees of senior management were updated on the current work practices at that stage. Compliance training is a key corporate risk and one that has been added to the covalent system for review within the coming quarter. And as an organisation, the challenge remains to ensure that corporately council have a robust compliance training programme for all staff based on their specific job activity. With the support of HR, a programme is being developed and updates will be presented through previous reports to members of this committee, and Corporate Health and Safety will work closely with HR to achieve the desired outcome. The internal summary audit reports, which is attached in Appendix G, were discussed, and the committee discussed the review of accident and incident data for that reporting period. The committee also discussed projects requiring corporate attention to review. We remain within a state of compliance with key statutory obligations such as Legionella control, control of contractors and FAGLA-related incidences. There was no impacts arising from this report, and members are asked to note the content of the report and to continue to endorse the health and safety systems and processes in place within the organisation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Una. Any members wishing to raise any issues? Go ahead, Emmett.
Thanks, Chair. Just when I was reading this, I don't necessarily have an issue with anything I've reported, but one of the things that jumped out at me in a previous report with regards to health and safety was concerns, I think, that have been raised around not necessarily injuries, but I remember a reference to musculoskeletal problems that some staff had come across, and I was wondering if someone doesn't have it now, that's fine, but if that's been discussed at this health and safety meeting, and if somebody could maybe even get back to me, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I'm happy just to reply briefly to that. So all accidents and instances, regardless of their status, is reported through to that committee. So again, I'm happy to run some fresh reports and share those with the members so you can see the type of incidents that we do discuss in detail within that committee. I'm happy to do that if that's helpful.
Thank you for that. Don't see anything else in the chat box. So members are happy. Anyone not happy to endorse the report?
Chair, just happy to propose it. Councillor Riley, if needed. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder there?
I'll
Michaela,
second it, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. We move on to item 8. And it's Derry City Strabane District Council annual audit letter. And hand over to Glenn O'Kane.
Chair. So the annual audit letter for 2021 effectively summarises the audit of the 2021 financial statements and effectively closes the audit for the 2021 year. The annual audit letter is in a format which is standard for all councils, and it is published on the council website as a formality and requirement under the legislation. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions on the annual audit letter.
Thank you. Any members got any questions?
happy to endorse it, Chair. Michaela.
Thank you, Michaela. We seconder for that.
Happy to second it, Chair. Councillor Riley. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on. Item 9. Again, hand over to Glenn.
Thank you. So this is the audit strategy for the 21-22 audit. And the audit strategy sets out our audit approach to the audit for the 21-22 financial statements and also the performance improvement audit for 22-23. I draw members' attention to the requirements for the audit committee, which are outlined on page 2 of the document. Page 3 of the document outlines the basis of the materiality we have calculated at this planning stage of the audit. There are 2 levels of materiality, one for council and one for the group, which includes the City of Derry Airport. We also assess any errors or misstatements against this level of materiality to consider the impact on the audit opinion. However, our materiality is not just about a figure, and we consider the materiality of findings in respective areas of sensitivity, which are outlined at the bottom of that page. For example, disclosures of officers and councillors' remuneration and the legality of expenditure. Page 4 of the document indicates a number of important areas influencing how we conduct our work, such as our independence from council and the management of the personal data which we use during our audit, and our interaction with internal audit and experts that we rely upon. Page 6 highlights that our audit approach is a risk-based approach, and we identify at the outset any significant risks. That is, any risks which might have the potential to impact upon the audit opinion. As our audit is carried out in accordance with international standards of auditing, or ISIS, we are required to consider these standards as part of our audit. Coming from the ISIS, there are two presumed significant risks which we must consider. The first of these is a presumed significant risk from the standards, which is to do with revenue recognition. Because most of the risk of fraud in revenue recognition is not material to the financial statements, we have decided that we would rebut this risk. The second presumed significant risk is the risk of material misstatement due to fraud through the management override of controls. This is a standard significant risk for all audits that we carry out, and we have designed a suite of audit tests to test for that risk. Specific to this particular council, we also have identified a significant risk regarding the going concern status of City of Derry Airport. Members will be aware that the funding position is a challenging one for City of Derry Airport, and therefore we will continue to monitor the position right up to the date of the certification of the financial statements. As well as significant risks, we've also identified two risk factors. The first of these is financial resilience. The ongoing impact of the pandemic on council finances continues. As part of our audit, we will look at council's financial projections and planned actions. The second risk factor is around COVID expenditure. We are aware that council have provided support to citizens through a number of schemes, and we'll examine the controls in place over this expenditure and test a sample of this expenditure. Page 8 of our document outlines the timetable for the completion of the audit financial statements. Page 10 outlines the timetable for the completion of the performance improvement and assessment audit. Pages 12 and 13 outline the audit teams and the audit fees. And finally, pages 13 and 14, we note any ongoing work on good practice guides and other reports which our office has completed. Happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Clint. I've got one, Clint, for you, just regarding page 3, and it's, you know, the threshold, and
Yeah.
the threshold being £36,000.
Yep.
And my sense of that is, you know, it's probably a percentage of the overall council budget. But if it was like a single misstatement of 36,000, it would be a major, you know, misstatement in itself. So I was just wondering in regards to that.
Okay, so the error reporting threshold, as you say, we have set at this stage at 36,000. So what that means is that we would only report errors back to this committee where the total of those errors was above £36,000. So then at that stage, it's up to members and officers to decide whether or not they would like the accounts adjusted for those. So if members felt that that was significant, then they could have the accounts adjusted. So that it's our estimate at this stage of a sort of reporting threshold, because we would find errors that would be, you know, much smaller than that. But obviously that's quite inefficient if we were to report every, you know, £1 or £2 or £3 of an error that we find. So we have to set a sort of a threshold which makes it more efficient for reporting back to you.
Thanks for that. The sense that I was making, you know, but see if it was one single fraudulent activity and it was 35,000, we wouldn't see it.
Well, as I said too, Chair, at the bottom of that page, you know, dependent on fraud basically has a 0% materiality. So if there's fraud found, then you would be every penny would be reported back to you, because it obviously is more significant than the quantum of the amount. So yes, any amount that would be through fraud would definitely be reported back to you, regardless of the quantum.
Thank you. Any other members, any questions? No. Members happy to move on? Yeah. Ian? That you're taking item 10?
Yes,
Okay,
so
thank you.
this is the audit strategy, which is in the same format, but this is the one for the Northwest Region Waste Management Group. I don't intend to go through this in the same because it's the same sort of format as I said. So just to highlight that page 6 of the document indicates the assessment of presumed significant risks. There are no identified significant risks for this body, as there were for the council. We have identified a risk factor regarding the 6th council project, and we'll continue to track developments of this project as the audit progresses, because that is quite a significant project for that organisation. And we'll consider whether or not there's any impacts on the financial statements or the audit opinion or any disclosures, etc. So that's all I really wanted to highlight in that document. But again, I'm happy to take any questions on it.
Thank you. Any members, any questions? No. Members happy to move on? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take item 11, which Denise is going to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this document is to seek your comments on and approval on the Council's audit needs assessment. Members will be aware that the audit section has finite resources, and the audit needs assessment is the method to ensure that these resources are concentrated in the areas of greatest risk. The objective is to ensure that all of the Council's key risk areas are audited over a given period of time. And based on the excuse me, members, it's simply not possible to audit all significant council activities and systems on an annual basis. So audit activity is undertaken on a cyclical basis. Based on the significant size of the council and the number of systems involved, the audit needs assessment process for the council is used to formulate the internal audit strategy and then produce the internal audit plan. And both are presented in subsequent documents, members, today for your approval. The purpose of the audit needs assessment is to ensure that there's a robust system of audits being undertaken of the council key activities and processes, that there's a process of recommending improvements to the council's control environment by providing management with advice, training and audit report recommendations. Excuse me, members. Members will see in Appendix A the audit needs assessment there, which has been completed for the council for a 5-year period. Members will see where systems have been categorised as A, B or C, and the audit plan then is subsequently produced following that. The highest risk systems there, as members will see, are the likes of waste management and capital projects, but all the systems have been included, and they've been categorised then as an A, B or C and included in the audit plan. Happy to take any questions or comments on the documents, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Denise. And I'll bring in Emmett.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Denise. I suppose I really only have one question. We've got a lot of extra workload coming up in terms of the strategic capital investments. Do we, I mean, we have a fairly small team, and I know you all work really hard. Do we think we have enough staff in the audit section to cover what are going to be a fairly challenging number of years with regards to the projects that we have in the pipeline? Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Doyle. Councillor Doyle, obviously we do have a finite number of resources, and the audit plan, as we always say, is only as good as the day that it's written and it's approved by committee, but we will always tailor the plan to suit the high risks of the organisation. So if we feel that there's a higher risk that's maybe not included in the audit plan at a particular moment in time, we will obviously bring that to committee, get approval from committee and make amendments to the audit plan. We will always ensure that the highest risk areas are audited and that there's an appropriate level of assurance provided to yourselves as members and to the Chief Executive and the senior leadership team. If at any time we feel that we are not able to provide that level of assurance, then we will bring that to your attention and bring it to the Chief Executive's attention. But at this minute in time, we've factored in everything that we think and needs assurance provided this year, and we will continuously keep that under review.
Thank you, Denise. All others in the chat box. Is there any members not happy to approve?
I was wondering if I could ask a question. I'd raise my hand, but maybe you couldn't see it there.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Denise, thanks for your very comprehensive report, and to James as well. And just taking into account your approach to the audit, oh, I know just over a number of years, some areas may not be touched on at all from an audit perspective. And I know you've talked about risk and the overall approach. I was just wondering if you could just tease that out a wee bit more for me, just given that you could have an area in the business that internal audit aren't involved in for quite a substantial number of years. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brona. And you're right. And obviously, as we have said, it's a huge council with a huge number of activities, and it's not possible that we look at everything. And that's why we do base it on a risk approach. But I suppose if I can give assurance that audit may not look at everything on an annual basis or even over 3 to 5 years, but it will be looked at as part of our risk management system. Every area within council has a risk register in place, and we will be able to provide assurance on that. If we feel upon reviewing those risk registers that there's an area which is causing significant concern or there's high risks in that area, we will tailor the audit plan to suit and make sure that those high risk areas are audited. Also, Brona, what we would do in our organisation is where we do have high risk areas where we have very detailed complex systems, we would spend a significant amount of time carrying out a very detailed audit, which you have seen in the reports that come before you, rather than just spending maybe 5 days carrying out a very brief audit. So we're focusing on the high risk areas. I think as we get through the audit environment and we get every area audit, we'd be able to scale back in those audits, but it's providing that level of assurance to the Chief Executive and to members and yourself. Rona, obviously, in terms of those very detailed areas, we need to do the detailed audit. But if there's any, as I say, we continuously review the risk registers, and if we feel that there's an area where there's risks are increasing, we will tailor the audit plan to ensure that there is an appropriate level of assurance always provided to yourselves.
Thank you for that, Denise. Don't see anyone against us. So I'll move on to item 12 and I'll hand over to James.
Thank you, Chair. We're taking items 12 and 13 together, if that's okay. The purpose of this report is to seek members' comments and approval for the internal audit strategy and plan for 22-23. The public sector internal audit standards require internal audit sections to have an internal audit strategy and plan approved by the organisation's audit committee. The internal audit strategy and plan details the focus and priorities for the internal audit section for the year ahead. A draft internal audit strategy and plan is attached for members' comments and approval and covers the following key points: the strategic direction of the internal audit section, strategic objectives, key priorities and targets, and the plan of work. There are no financial implications arising from this report, and it is recommended that members approve the draft internal audit strategy and plan for 22-23.
Any members, any questions? Happy to move on? Yes. Thank you, members. I will move on to item 14, which is Deborah will take.
Hi, the purpose of this report is to update members on the internal audit work carried out within Derry City and Strabane District Council in the period November 2021 to March 2022. During this period, the audit of digital services has been finalised. The purpose of the review of digital services is to provide the Assurance Audit and Risk Committee and senior management with an assurance on the adequacy and effectiveness of internal control over the audit area of digital services. As you know, digital services provides the platform for effective delivery of many of the core functions of Council. Appropriate and effective controls are important to ensuring that the operating and security arrangements of IT systems are functioning effectively. Based upon the audit work undertaken, internal audit is satisfied that the internal systems and controls are adequate and were operating effectively at the time of the audit review. And as a result, the audit has received a satisfactory assurance rating. A summary of the key findings are outlined in paragraph 3.1.6 to 3.1.8 of this summary report. As a result of the audit work, internal audit made 17 recommendations to improve the control environment and to strengthen the controls already in place. A summary of these recommendations, along with the management responses and implementation dates, can be found in the Table of Recommendations section on page 251 of the committee papers. This will be presented in confidential business due to the sensitivity and confidentiality of the information contained within the report. There are two categories of exempt information: under Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, Northern Ireland 2014, that allow the use of confidential business in this scenario. These are Sections 3 and Section 7. Due to the nature of the information contained within the audit report, Exemption 7 has been applied as the report details the architecture and infrastructure of our IT systems and processes. Although we can present a summary of the findings here in open business, the detailed report would be a useful source of information for hackers or cyber criminals who may target the council system. As such, although we have always strived for openness and transparency in our reporting, the publication of this report to the public at large would create an unnecessary risk in itself. As such, I propose if we can now move to confidential business, where members can discuss any area of concern they have within the report.
Thank you for that, Deborah. As outlined, well, really outlined, how we need to take us into confidential business, members. And as highlighted there, if this was done in open business, this would leave us at severe risk, which is the purpose